Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. This episode is produced for GoodCrowd.info, and our guest today is Sean Nasiri, the CEO and founder of GenYrator, a GenY-focused crowdfunding site, equity crowdfunding site. Sean, thank you very much for joining us. It's exciting to have you.
Thank you, Devin. I'm excited to be here. Like I told you when we met, you've been one of the people I've followed to cover crowdfunding, social impact, social entrepreneurship since day one, so this is a great opportunity.
Well, it's great to finally meet the fan, so thank you. I knew there was one out there. So, Sean, it's really exciting to hear what you're doing because you're creating an equity crowdfunding site for GenY and focusing that, as so much of the Generation Y energy is, on having some impact. But tell us a little bit about your plans.
Yeah, absolutely. So GenYrator, which is a play on Generation Y and Accelerator, is an equity crowdfunding platform now, but really what we're trying to do is build an entire ecosystem. Because while access to capital is almost sexy and attractive piece for a startup, it's still very one small but important piece of the puzzle. Access to capital, guidance, tools, resources, services, all the things you get from an established ecosystem such as Silicon Valley, where I grew up. I feel we have the technology now to bring those all online in a way that our generation is comfortable interfacing and make those rules, those best practices, everything applicable across every industry vertical, not just tech. And we don't have to be limited by location anymore.
It really is. You're capturing this fundamental shift in the population where the idea of place and proximity is radically altered by technology. And it's a process that's been evolving over a generation, but it's especially acute for people of your generation. I hate to admit that my son is part of your generation, but I remember he lived a summer in Europe and just on a whim spent a weekend in Turkey. The world is just a radically smaller place than it was before, and place is just doesn't have the same significance to someone your age as it does to me or to my parents. So very exciting technology opportunity here. Why do you think that Generation Y is so much more focused on impact than preceding generations?
That's a great question. So I would actually credit it to the point you were just making. Location, proximity, the ability to communicate, all that stuff has empowered us. Our mobile phones, while everybody uses it as primaries for communication, no, what our mobile phones give us is instantaneous access to information. If we want to look up something, if we want to find out what's going on, if we want to see how something's done, we don't have to go scour through the Dewey Decimal System or look through dry encyclopedias. We do a couple clicks on our phone or even use voice, and boom, we search for it, and instantaneously we have all of this breadth of information right at our fingertips. And with knowledge comes power, and with that, we are more aware of what's going on in the world, and we really want to do something about it. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity to have that information, and as the people who hold that power, it's our responsibility to do something with it. And I'm very excited to see that kind of social, environmental awareness has started to trickle up to already established companies, where you start seeing more companies like Salesforce with their 1-1-1 model, everyone piggybacking off Tom's shoes with their 1-for-1 model. It's almost becoming a demand, if you want to appeal to our generation, to have some sort of social or environmental initiative. And that's a trend that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, it seems to be it seems to be universal, that nowadays everyone wants that. What seems to be different about Generation Y is that they insist on that in all aspects of their lives. People my age, our generation, we're perfectly comfortable separating our philanthropy and our work lives, but Generation Y is approaching life in a much more integrated, holistic way, don't you think?
100%. The separation between philanthropy, giving, taking, making money, having fun, all of that stuff is kind of embodied within our generation. No more does the CEO of a company need to be the bookworm or just the workaholic. You see pictures of Zuckerberg at nightclubs. You see people just going out there having fun. You see field trips to save the rainforest, and all that stuff is super important. And there's no reason investing shouldn't have that similar kind of that feel, right? Why can you, when you look at an investment for the most part with the stock market, with real estate, it's all about return on investment and IRR and over what length of time and what my multiple is going to be. But why can't there be some sort of impact to it? Why can't it have some sort of social capital? Like, social capital should be just as important as actual money return as well. How much money am I returning to me, but more importantly, how much am I giving to the world as well? And I think that's what our platform is going to kind of enable us to do is, there's plenty of people out there who are like, oh, I don't care about startups. I'm not an investor. I give my money to somebody to do that. Well, okay, fine. Maybe you don't care about investing. Maybe you don't understand the mechanics of it. But you do understand the concept of helping somebody. You do understand the concept of a group of young people working together, trying to make a difference in the world and trying to impact change. You can understand the storyline. You can understand the product. You understand something tangible. You can understand the community. And by bridging all those gaps, we can create an investment environment that combines real returns with real impact and can give you the same good feeling as you get when you do philanthropy. But hey, you get to still make money too.
Yeah, it really is a huge paradigm shift. Now, a couple of questions for you. Are you anticipating that you will allow old people on your site, or will you limit it strictly to people of your generation?
In terms of what? In terms of entrepreneurs?
Well, either side of the coin.
Well, obviously, we welcome all generations to participate on the platform. We are not a cut and dry, black and white, linear platform like most other equity crowdfunding platforms out there that are only open to accredited investors and startups raising capital. We have a complete open door policy because it takes more than just investors and it takes more than just startups to make it happen. You need a fan base, you need loyalty, you need specialists, you need enthusiasts, you need people who are going to go out there and champion your product. So while right now we're focusing on Generation Y founded startups, we encourage all generations to help out where they can. Maybe you don't have the capital, maybe the project at hand isn't something you truly believe investing your money in, but maybe you have some connections. Maybe you can open up your network. Maybe you can give some advice. Maybe you have some specific expertise, or you have a couple thousand followers on social media that you can blast the product out to. There's so many different ways you can get involved, and anything you're doing to help this current generation. I mean, the 20-year-olds of today are going to be the 40-year-olds of tomorrow. They're going to be the leaders. They're going to be the decision makers. Most importantly, they're going to be the job creators, and they're going to be the ones who are putting money back into the economy. So investing in GenY today is really just an investment in the future.
Well, that's an inspiring way to look at it, and it makes perfect sense for the business as well. So when do you launch?
So as of right now, we have our private beta launch set for November 15th. As any good entrepreneur knows, you have to stick to your specific niche, and you have to stay disciplined, and you have to achieve your proof of concept. So for our proof of concept, we are focusing on what my entirely USC Trojan team and I know best, which is the USC Trojan Network, fight on. And that's what we're focusing on. I think there's a tremendous opportunity there to connect, the up-and-coming generation of entrepreneurs with our super prideful, affluent, and well-connected alumni network. The kind of connections that, other schools up north and around the country have been getting, but for whatever reason, that connection just still isn't there between the alumni and the entrepreneurs that I feel could be. And maybe it's because USC has the biggest international population, is 50% out of state, and let's be honest, driving around LA is pretty miserable. So I think having an online platform there to facilitate those kinds of interactions and those kinds of transactions will be huge for what we're trying to accomplish with everything.
I think you're onto something there. The alumni network at SC is incredibly powerful, and you're likely to tap into some huge dollars, and great people. So I think that's a great place to start and build from. Tell me a little bit about the history. How did you come to this idea? Why was it important to you?
Great question. So this story kind of comes twofold, right? There is my personal story as someone who grew up in Silicon Valley, got early exposure to the whole entrepreneurship scene, got to see firsthand all the immense benefits of having that robust and awesome Silicon Valley startup ecosystem in place. And then it came to when I got down to USC, and I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here too. In fact, there's maybe even more entrepreneurs here, except just a different kind of entrepreneur. Up in the Silicon Valley, it's a lot of creators, builders, and then they learn the business side of things. Down in LA, it's a lot of really savvy people looking to solve problems, create efficiencies, seek opportunities within existing markets, and just savvy go-getters. And it's actually through USC where I met my co-founder, Jay Roth, who was just a pure hustler, had a jewelry company, was involved with a couple other things, and just through USC's tight-knit entrepreneurship scene, we stuck together. And after graduating, I went did the corporate route thing, and before realizing, corporate life wasn't for me, and I don't think it's for our generation as a whole. Corporations aren't really looking out for us. They're looking to increase revenue, and part of that is decreasing cost. And one of the biggest costs is human capital. So that's why you see them developing technologies to replace entire departments. And those departments they can't replace, they just outsource it to a country that does it cheaper. I mean, look at Amazon, right? They're trying to get drones to replace delivery people. So I think that's another reason why our generation is starting to become more entrepreneurial. But essentially, I always try to wrap my head around how can I bridge that gap between all the best practices, the benefits of that Silicon Valley ecosystem, and all the entrepreneurs I met at SC and the ones I met abroad through Kairos Society, which is just an incredible international organization of young entrepreneurs. How can I bring those same benefits to the whole world? And it was after I quit my job that Jay called me up and was like, hey, so I have this idea. I need to figure out a way to help people. I keep getting all these decks sent my way, all these kids trying to raise capital. I know you do too. You're out there in the valley. You know what's going on. Let's raise a fund together. Now, 2 months prior, I was at a tech conference in London called Le Web, where I sat in on a panel on crowdfunding, which had been legal in Europe well before it had been here. And I was like, well, VC fund might be a little early, a little aggressive, but that's what I love about Jay. He's aggressive go-getter. But I have this one-off idea called equity crowdfunding that we could essentially still accomplish the same mission of helping our friends get access to capital, but through an online network, we can do so much more than just the capital piece.
It's a great story, and it gets at the value proposition and the shift in the capital markets that equity crowdfunding represents. Before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about the regulatory environment that you're operating under. For now, you'll have to operate under Title II of the Jobs Act, addressing only accredited investors. But tell me a little bit about your thinking about Title III and how you might and when you might implement crowdfunding for ordinary investors.
Absolutely. I mean, the Jobs Act, the whole pinnacle of the Jobs Act was Title III, the democratization of capital. Now, right now, the access to who's investing and who's receiving the money is held by, less than 1% of all people out there, all business owners, all people with disposable income. And the Jobs Act was going to open that all up. Under Title II, you can deal with accredited investors. The legislation's pretty open. As long as you have over $1 million or make $200,000 a year or $300,000 combined with your spouse, you're considered accredited, and just from having that level of income without any sort of educational verification or background, the government says, hey, you've made enough money that you're necessarily responsible for how you invest it. Now, under Title III of the Jobs Act, since we're dealing with people with less money, their assumptions are, they might have less education, might have less understanding, might be easier to take advantage of. Title III regulations have become incredibly harsh and incredibly cumbersome for really any platform or for any entrepreneur to raise money through the way the legislation is written now. With that said, it's a year past due on Title III, and I think we're coming up on the anniversary of Title II. So we're staying hopeful that the reason why it's taking so long is because the powers that be at the SEC and the bureaucrats in Congress understand that the way the legislation is written right now, no one's going to do it, and people that do are going to get it's not going to be beneficial to them. But at the same time, you have to protect the average consumer. And that's where this whole general solicitation law that Title III lifted, that's the reason why it was enacted. You know, swindlers were coming town to town, pitching people ideas, taking people's money, and leaving town the next day. You know, well, it's not the 1930s anymore. You know, we're all part of the sharing economy. And, you know, you see Uber and Airbnb, which is what made, you know, Uber and Airbnb is a perfect example that a lot of people don't draw the similarities to crowdfunding for, right? 5, 10 years ago, would you have ever gone into a stranger's apartment or gone into a stranger's car? No. Absolutely. More importantly, would you have let them into yours? Doubtful. So why does that exist? Because you know there's technology behind it. You can see their face. It's linked to their social media profiles. The infrastructure's there. You know it's taken care of. So crowdfunding, same thing. You want to make sure there's protections in lay. You want to make sure people aren't putting up their life savings. But at the same time, you want to make sure everybody can still participate. So we're really hoping Congress puts something cool together and allows everybody the opportunity to invest in startups, because it's a fun process. Being a part of someone's journey to success, knowing you contributed, that's a feeling that everybody should get to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sean, before we go, how do people connect with you if they want to learn more?
You want to learn more? Go to our website, www.GenYrator.com. That's GenYrator with a Y. It's live. Sign up. Go visit the Facebook page. Go visit the LinkedIn. Follow us on Twitter for all the exciting updates we have to come in the next couple months. This is a great time to be on board. Thanks again, Devin. Your timing couldn't have been more perfect with this. Really appreciate the opportunity.
We're excited for you. We wish you every success. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Fight on.
All righty. Fight on. Let's do some good.